Hi, I'm Sarah from Sabito Media, and I've put together this Launch in the New Year podcast launch workshop. I've split it into two parts. In part one, we're going to talk about the planning that needs to happen before you launch your podcast. And in part two, we'll talk about the tech side of actually doing all the things. So in the description, there is a link to a workbook, and that's a Google document. All you need to do is follow that link, make a copy of it for yourself, then you can print it off if you want, or you can type in as you choose. So make sure you have your workbook to go along with it. Here's part one. All right, I am gonna get started. So this is Launch in the New Year, and a lot of this is relevant any time of the year. I just wanted to get it done before January for people who are trying to get launched in January. So, well, first thing you'll need to do is download the workbook. So I've got a workbook right here. I'll share the link. And you can make a copy of this so that you can type in it or print it off and write in it, whatever you prefer, however you like to do that. So go grab your workbook. First thing. All right, now I was up way too late building this sucker because hyperfocus go wee. So the podcast launch workshop. So the process we're going to go through today, going to talk a little bit about me, who I am, what I do, who it's for, etc. Then we're going to get into you and why you're here. Why do you want a podcast? What's your goal with it? And what you can do to think about like setting some goals for what your podcast is for. We'll go over recording tips and equipment, and it's really not as overwhelming as some people think it is. It's really not. And then getting started, that's the actual doing of the things that need to be done. And then launch day, you celebrate. And then I've got some FAQs at the back. I'm going to catch most of those as I go. So here we go. I am Sarah Decker. I am a classically trained music performer and composer, teacher, mom, and hobby collector. I start lots of hobbies and finish very few of them. And I play French horn in the Black Hills Symphony, and I teach K-12 music at a little teeny tiny school close to my hometown in South Dakota. I have many music degrees. I have a double bachelor's in French horn performance and music composition in theory from the University of Wyoming, and also a master's of fine arts in music composition for the screen from Columbia College, Chicago. My daughter's 11. We have 4 cats. I'm sure I'll have at least one of them join us in a little bit because they can't not bug me when I'm at my computer. And we have a ball python that's about as long as I am. So what got me into podcasting? It was like 2019 or so, and I kind of fell into a website design project, which I'm still working with that website, and that's good. So that kind of gave me the proof that I needed that there is work that can be done if you just put yourself out there. So then I started exploring my options, wanting to do something that used my skills better. Because I can build a website. It's decent. It's not great. It's not the best, but it's, it's fine. So I worked with a coach, and she actually had the idea that because of my audio skills, what I know about audio editing and recording and all of that because of my master's degree, I should try editing podcasts. So I did, and I have been ever since. I've been doing that since 2019. So it's really nice to be able to use those skills that I worked so hard to get. Sometimes I'll write original music for the intro and outro. It's really, really interesting to listen to people when they get off on a rant about something they're really passionate about. It's really really cool. It's so fun to listen to, and I've learned so much already. And it helps me to know that I am making an impact because these people have a story that needs to be heard. And by the work that I do with editing and publishing their episodes, it seems like, big picture, it seems like I'm not doing a lot. But it really helps them to get their message out, their voice out, and they can make a bigger impact in their community because of the work I do. So since 2019, when I started all this, I've helped launch over 50 podcasts. I have lost track of how many. I know it's at least 50. Could be close to 70. I don't even know, really. I have to go through my Canva and count each of the different, like, show art just to try and figure out how many it's been. So let's get yours done. That's why we're here today. All right. So the process for a launch is you don't just start recording immediately. You need to have a strategy, you need to have a plan, and you need to have a goal. So we'll set that first. Then you prepare. That's when you record. That's when you get submitted. That's when you make your cover art. Once you have things rolling, then you start building up the excitement. You hype it up to your audience. We'll go into what you can do, but you build excitement in your community before your episodes launch. And then on launch day, you can sit back and celebrate, hey, I did this thing. It is out there in the world now. So first things first, why do you want a podcast? And no, just because everybody else has one does not make it a reason. What will it be about and who is it for? You need to be very clear on that. So I just came across these stats. They're cool. I don't need to convince you that you want a podcast, but here's some really cool things that I came across from demandsage.com. So for the authority piece, listeners consider podcast hosts to be 64% more trustworthy than other influencers just because it's a podcast. That doesn't make these people any smarter or anything. It's just because it's a podcast. I don't know if it's because it feels more professional or I don't know what, but that's a large chunk. Advertisements. 69% of listeners credit podcast as a source of learning about new brands and products. So getting your brand out there, if you have physical products you're trying to sell your own stuff on your podcast. Do it. People are paying attention. They are listening because business podcasts, and I'm assuming that if you're here, it's because you want your podcast to have something to do with your business. Business podcasts average a listen completion rate of 76%. Compare that to your email open rate, which is probably, I don't even know what that number is anymore. I want to say it's like less than 20% email open rate. I mean, podcasts, people pay attention. They do. They are listening. Setting a goal for yourself, and this is where we start in the workbook. What will your show be about? If you want it to be a passion project, just something that you want to do for fun, that's cool, great, awesome. Those are hard to monetize unless you have a huge following. So if you want to make this a marketing side of your business, you need to have a set goal. What message do you want to get out there? Why now? Why does this message matter now? And how does it connect to your business? You can't really connect a passion project podcast to your business and expect it to make money for you. That's not really how this works. And do you want to monetize it? Some people don't. Some people just want to have their show, do their thing, say what they want to say. Doesn't matter if it makes them any money, and that's great. But you also need to know who the show is for. Who's your message for? And who are these people? What are they interested in? Where do they hang out? What do they want? What are they struggling with? And how will you get their attention? Now, I'm not a marketing professional. That's not my wheelhouse. I know some tips because I've worked with some really great people. Well, hi. I told you we'd have a visitor. I'm not a marketing person, but I do know that if you want the right people to find your show, you need to get it in front of them in some way or another. And it needs to be clear to them what your show is about and why they should listen. That was Artemis, by the way. So there's basically 3 types of monetization options. There's ad placement, which you can get through a lot of hosts. They'll have an option that once you hit a certain number of downloads, you can get ads from whatever their system is, and it'll stick the ad into your episode wherever they feel like putting it, and it'll kick you back a couple bucks. So there's not very much work required for you on that side, so that's nice, and a couple bucks here and there adds up. So that's an option. I know for sure that Spotify, well, it used to be Anchor, which is now Spotify for podcasters, has this. Buzzsprout has this. I don't know about other hosts because those are 2 of the 3 that I regularly work with, but there's an option inside your hosting that you can get some ads. Sponsors are a different story. You have to apply to sponsors and you have to find them, and they are going to have requirements for what you can do, how many episodes you have, how many downloads you get in a month, how many downloads you get on each episode. They're going to probably give you an ad to use that you can stick in, or you need to read an ad script for them. This is mostly what people think about when they're thinking about monetizing their podcast, and on YouTube also. Same kind of thing. If you have a big enough audience, then you can probably get some sponsors. But the best way that I have seen with the people that I've worked with is to sell your own stuff. So if this is connected to your business, sell your offers. Just sell your own offers. If you get 1 person signed up for your coaching from your podcast, that's worth it, isn't it? Just 1. So if you have workshops coming up, mention them. If you have a webinar that's coming out, mention it, put it in an ad. You can put an ad for your own stuff inside your own episode. Put it in your outro at the end as your call to action. Get people into your email list, get people into your Facebook group. This is really the good way to connect your podcast to your business, is to sell your own offers. This works especially well for coaches. I'll get into that in a little bit. But you can plan your episodes around launches. If you know that you have a cohort that always opens up in February, plan your episodes, 3 or 4 episodes ahead of time, talking about that. Talk about what you're going to do. Talk about case studies for things that other clients have done. So we will get more in detail in that in a little bit. So in your workbook, I put a column on the side for some notes. Okay, so before you start recording, you got to know who you're speaking to. Are you talking to men, women, the trans community? Are you talking to business owners? Are you talking to moms, parents, couples that are having trouble? Are you talking to, let's see, what are some other horse enthusiasts? Dog groomers. That's a show that I helped launch, was for dog groomers. You got to know who you're talking to. And then from the other side, it needs to be clear what they can expect to get from listening to you. They're not going to just listen to you because you're there. This is not a build it and they will come thing. When you're making your title and your description and all of these things, when you're talking about your podcast, it needs to be really clear what they're going to get out of listening and why they should. And then it also needs to be clear what you want them to do. Do you want them to sign up for your email list? Do you want to get them into your free group? Do you want them to sign up for a webinar? Make it very clear, and you got to make the ask, because they're not going to know unless you ask, right? They're not going to read your mind, and they're not going to scroll down to the bottom of the show notes to see the one little link that you stuck in there unless you tell them that that link is there. So you just got to talk about your stuff. And that's what I'm doing today, which today is very much a case of do it scared. Done is better than perfect. That's where I'm at today. Because I've been waiting for, the crud in my throat to clear up. I've been wanting to rearrange my office. I'm doing a big bad no-no using my built-in microphone. I don't have the fan turned off in the kitchen. Like, I'm doing all kinds of things that you don't want to do today. But this is what I had to do to get this actually done. A lot of people, when they're starting podcasts, they want to have guests. Use them strategically. Will a guest expert support your mission and message? Or are they going to end up undermining your authority? If you have too many guests on and everybody's an expert, how are you the expert? Because you're making everybody else the expert. You need to establish your own authority and your own wisdom, because people are coming here to listen to you. They're not coming to listen to the guests. And don't expect that guests are going to bring their audience along with them automatically, because a lot of times they don't. Sometimes they might, but you don't want to bank on having a huge influx of listeners just because you brought this one specific person as a guest on your podcast, because it doesn't really happen that way. If you bring in guests, it needs to be strategic. Now, with business podcasts, what I've seen works really, really, really well. Instead of bringing in other guest experts, bring in clients, do some hot seat coaching so that people can see your process, pull in some former clients and do some case studies. Just make sure that you think, oh, here she comes again. Make sure that you think about whether or not having that guest is going to benefit your listeners and how. Because just having guests to have guests and thinking that that'll spread the word about your show, that's not really how it works. So there's different ways that you can map out your episodes, and this kind of goes with the marketing side of things. But a way that I've seen it done that works well is to map your episodes and group your ideas so that they build on each other. It's just the same thing as storytelling. You can tell a little bit about your journey, establish who you are, what you're an expert in, let them get to know you a little bit in the early episodes. And then you can move into the client journey and your work and how you bring people from where they are to where they want to be. And then give some proof. That's when you can pull in former clients for case studies. So get them to know you a little bit first, then get them to know your work, and then you can start showing how your work makes a difference. So that's just one way that you can map out the first. I mean, you could probably do 12 episodes on that, just 3 or 4 in each area. A few at the beginning for you and what you do and how you work, a few walking people through your client journey or client process, and then a few talking about, stories about clients. That's a real easy way to get started. And then once you're rolling, then you can start, feeling the flow of how you want your episodes to go. But just to get started, it's nice to have a little roadmap. So recording and equipment, I'm doing all kinds of no-nos today. So do as I say, not as I do. All right, it doesn't have to be super fancy or expensive. Okay, now I have had to replace my microphone, so I can't show you, but I have a Samson Q2U. Another good one is the Audio-Technica 2100. The thing about those is they are dynamic microphones. Most microphones that you see are condensers, and that will condense all of the sound in the room. You can change like the direction they're pointing, and there's ways that you can make a Blue Yeti sound okay, like with the settings, but you have to set it up right. Otherwise, you're going to get a whole bunch of background noise, and it's hard to fix that in editing. So you're better off getting a dynamic microphone, and both of those are They're both about 60 bucks, 50, 60 bucks. They're not expensive. You can go fancier if you want. You don't have to. You really don't. Right now I'm using the built-in iMac microphone, and I'm sure at some point you're going to hear the CPU on my computer kick up and you'll hear the fan kick on. So the built-in one you don't really want to do, but like an iPhone microphone or like on your cell phone, those are fine. Those are fine to get started. Don't let the equipment hold you back. Really don't. Okay, every host and guest needs headphones. Now these ones are pretty fancy. These are professional grade studio monitors. They're the Sony, let me look. Sony MDR 7506, and I have linked those in the workbook. The headphones are important so that when you're recording, you can hear any sounds that are coming through, any background noises, and then you can like hopefully fix that so that it's not in the recording in the first place. Also, if you're having guests, everyone needs to have headphones on, because if when someone is speaking and their sound comes through that person's speakers, then that ends up through their microphone and you get echo and you get mic bleed and you get crosstalk, and it's hard to clean those up. So the very best thing, even if they're just little earbuds, okay, for your guests, even if they're just earbuds, just so that the sound of the other people on the call isn't coming through like their computer speakers and interfering with their microphone. So another really important thing to do, probably the most important thing, is room treatment, which I have not done in this room. So I've probably got some echo in here because I don't have very many soft furnishings. There's a fan going in the kitchen, and the water heater's in the closet back there, so that might kick on. If you have air conditioners, turn those off for a little bit while you're recording. You can even make yourself a blanket fort around your microphone area, or like pillows, or record in a closet. That's why people record in the closet, is because all the soft fabric eliminates echo. And echo is really hard to get rid of when you're editing. So now the number one thing, I said you don't have to be fancy about your headphones or your microphone, but don't record using AirPods. Just don't. They have the worst sound for podcasting, and it is really hard to fix. So don't use AirPods. If you've got earbuds with a little, microphone that's down on the wire, those are better than AirPods for recording. Like I said before, condenser microphones pick up a lot of room noise. They're really commonly recommended. Like the Yeti is like the number one podcasting microphone. I don't know why that is, except for marketing. It's not very good. You can make the settings work, but it's not good. So I don't know how they ended up in the top of, oh, I got a Yeti because that's what I'm supposed to get. No, 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 babe. No. No, it's just good marketing. Some recording tips. I already went into room treatment. Do whatever you can to remove background noise and echo, because that'll make editing so much easier. Everyone on the recording needs to wear headphones. That'll avoid feedback, mic bleed. Speaking skills. This is where it'll make or break your editing process. You can ask your guests to wait a couple of seconds before answering your question. And also yourself, you can wait a couple of seconds till they're done with their sentence before you start speaking again. Crosstalk is one of the hardest things to fix, because sometimes when you're on calls like this, like on this one that I'm on right now, they have like a noise reduction function, so that if someone else is speaking, even if you save both files separately, one of them will distort because the other one is speaking, because that's the noise reduction kicking in. So if you're talking over each other and interrupting, lots of uh-huh, yeah, right, those kinds of things when the other person is speaking, that actually makes it pretty hard to listen to and pretty hard to edit. Oh, and also, and I'm doing this too, when you stumble over your sentence If you need to re-say something, just pause for a second and give it a couple of seconds and then start your sentence over again. That makes a really clear space to edit instead of saying the wrong word, oh, sorry, I mean, blah, blah, blah. It's hard to cut out that, oh, sorry, I mean, to say. Just stop, start your sentence over. That makes it much, much easier to fix in editing. And that's something you can train yourself to do, as well as being mindful of your ums, your nos, those kinds of things. That just takes some getting used to. Remote recording, if you're going to have guests, and a lot of people do, not everybody does, but a lot of people do. I'm using Squadcast today. This is my first time using it since they just connected to Descript. Squadcast will automatically import your recording into Descript, and that's where I like to do my editing. In the workbook, I've got an affiliate link for Descript, and I'll get into that in a little bit later, but for my workflow with editing, it has really made a big difference. You can also use Riverside or Zencaster, or there's a bunch of apps that you can use to record remote interviews. Zoom works because most people already know what it is and they have the app and they know how to use it and everything, so it's easy that way, but the quality isn't great. The file is already like treated and condensed when you get it out of there, which doesn't give you as many options for editing. Next thing you need to make sure to do is to save each speaker to a separate track and disable the noise reduction. These are options in the app's preferences. In Squadcast, I didn't see an option to save separate files, and since I don't have anyone else speaking on this call, I'm not going to be able to experiment with that today. But I know in Zoom for sure, and on Riverside, you can go into the preferences, the app preferences, and tell it to save each speaker separately. And you want to do that. You want separate files for everyone because each person's room is different, and you want to be able to treat just their file for their room sound. Not everybody's files all at the same time for a bunch of different rooms, because that doesn't really work very well. As I said before, you can ask your guests to be careful about their recording space. Try to get them to lose a little bit of the echo, or turn a fan off, or close the door, close a window, and avoid crosstalk and interruptions. One of my clients gets pristine recordings, and I don't know what she says to her guests ahead of time. She has a million guests, but there's always a couple of seconds gap between when she is speaking and when they are speaking, and it gives me such a clean file to work with. It's just glorious. But there's a problem when everyone is always interrupting each other and they each insist on finishing their sentence. Well, no one can understand what's happening then. So be mindful of your own speech, and you can ask your guests to do the same thing so that you're not talking over each other. Because if I get to a spot when I'm editing that both of you are speaking, I have to try and figure out which one is more important. And then because they're talking on top of each other, the other file is going to be distorted. So can I even understand? Like if I take the one out that's not the important one, can I even understand the other one still? So these are things that are best to avoid when you're recording. Thanks for joining me. Now go find part 2. See you there.